Welcome back to the Treehouse Permaculture Farm, everyone. We're here on a beautiful Tuesday morning, and I wanted to finally go over the results for our solarization versus tilling experiment. So about, I'd say 3 weeks ago now, I tilled up part of this garden, and I also solarized part of the garden like this, using a tarp. Now I've seen videos comparing clear plastic versus black plastic. Here we have green plastic, which still heats up pretty well, but from my research, black plastic is the best for solarization, and we will use that more next summer. But I wanted to show you guys our results for our first experiment. And I'll say the things I noticed is better germination and better crop growth with the solarization. There seems to be pockets of air or pockets of inconsistencies like rotting weeds or rotting crops in the soil that is affecting germination and is affecting growth a little bit, but we still have crops growing throughout the beds. And I have noticed that there are many more weeds coming up in the tilled areas compared to the solarized areas, but you will see there's not a huge difference between the weed growth in the solarized area versus the tilled area. So I will show you guys the crop growth. I sowed 3 different types of kale. Only red Russian kale came up. I will say red Russian kale germinates very well compared to the other kale varieties like Siberian or dinosaur kale in this hot weather. So I will show you guys the results in just a moment. So here we have a couple of kale plants. They've gotten pretty big in 3 weeks. There's a little bit of insect damage, but nothing that's going to kill these plants. We'll just have to wait a few more weeks before we have actually marketable leaves, but this is a great start for the fall. These plants are pretty big, as you can see. They've grown quite well. I fertilized the whole row after weeding it the first time about a week and a half ago. And the weeds are pretty vigorous in this area, as you can see, but we used a stirrup hoe and then hand weeded the rest and then laid down this hay, as you can see, and it's keeping the weeds back enough for us to grow this kale. So this is the solarized area, and the kale, as you can see, is pretty big, pretty healthy. Now I'll show you guys the tilled area. Alright, so this area is a pretty good representation of what's going on in the tilled area. There's not quite as much germination. These plants, they look almost as big as those plants over there, but you find a lot more of this where the plants are a little smaller, taking a little bit longer to grow. But they are growing. And we have some healthy plants here. They're just a little bit smaller, and I've noticed that consistently in the tilled area. So I would say solarization does keep the soil health intact more than tilling does. And that's one of my insights from this experiment. Next, I will show you guys the control bed where I only let weeds grow, so you can see the difference in weed growth. So here we have my control bed in the middle. The Swiss chard did not germinate. Swiss chard doesn't do well in August, now we know. But I will also compare. Over here we have arugula and radishes. But for now, this is the weed control bed where we can see how weeds grew. I'll let you see for yourself. This is the tilled area, and you can kind of see how dense it is with weeds. And now I'll show you guys the solarized area. starting here. This is a solarized area. Pretty similar. I'll say down here there's less weeds. Less weed growth here. But it's pretty similar. I'm sure if I left the tarp on longer, I would have a little bit better results, but we'll have to test that next year. And I'll try a black tarp next year. But my results suggest that there may be fewer weeds, but the biggest difference is keeping the soil health intact and growing bigger vegetables with not tilling the soil. So no-till seems to be helpful for vegetable growth. I'm going to show you guys over here, we have an arugula bed where I did something similar. So this is the solarized area. Pretty good growth. And then we're in the tilled area now. Pretty good here, but it kind of falls off in the end where it got a little rough. Definitely rake out your area that you tilled. But the bed's pretty good. We'll get a good yield from this. But I definitely suggest tarping if you can. If you do till, definitely make sure to rake out the bed and make it a flat bed, because you do have more washed out areas in this arugula bed. And there's River coming to help. But yeah, this is the results for this other side of the garden. I would say the solarized areas produce vegetables much better. And similarly with the radishes, I do have to weed this, but the radishes are less dense and then they're more dense over here. So I'm noticing kind of a theme that the solarized or tarped areas perform better in producing crops. So I hope you guys enjoyed this continuation of the experiment. I wanted to show you how we are trying different methods to grow better, to do better by the soil, and to do better by our crops. So I hope you learned something from this. We learned a lot about probably getting an earlier start on solarizing our beds for the fall so we can mostly do solarization and keep healthier soil. Thanks for joining us today, guys. We had a lot of fun with this experiment, and we'll continue to compare different methods so you guys can know what really works in your permaculture garden. So this is Henry signing off. I'll see you guys next time.